Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci of CFL Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 249 and 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now, here we are, CFL Talk, of course, with David Morassutti. David, how's it going, bud?
Great. How you guys doing?
Oh, awesome. Hey, a lot going on today.
Yeah, I mean everyone's back from vacation. I make the joke they're back from vacation, but I don't think there was much vacationing going on.
Uh, it's an interesting time right now. And now we do a CFL show, and every end of season after the CFL parks itself, and we pay a little attention to the NFL. We're going to pay it some attention today, but we'll start with our main topic and our league of interest, the teams that are back here, the Canadian Football League. There's been a lot going on. The winter meetings are going on right now. I've had a chance to sit in on all the interviews. I know you sat on a few. Some interesting stuff going out there. What touches you in as far as what's been going on um, in the CFL period?
I mean, the big thing is just all the teams getting ready for free agency,
Making moves.
right? Getting themselves we're still technically about a month away until free agency, and yet it almost feels like free agency is opening up next week with the way that everything's been operating.
Well, I think what we're seeing. I apologize. I have a bit of a cold.
You got what I got.
David gave it to me.
Yeah, through the
power of the internet. Through the power of the internet. I got to tell you, because we always admit we follow the Argos more than we do any other team because that's where we are, and that's who we have, the games we go to. They really look like they're working on trying to keep McManus. They're making a lot of trades that save them a lot of money, which means McManus is going to make maybe even a little more than he made last time, and that's going to be a pretty rich ticket.
I mean, and really it should be when you look at how he's played for this team, right? It's not like he hasn't been, you know, the catalyst for where this team has gone, right? This team's fortunes all changed, when Dinwiddie joined, but it also was the players that were brought in after him, and he was one of them. I think he and we know how valuable his contributions are. We know how how the team is when he's playing and how they are when he isn't playing. But there's also an understanding if you bring back McManus, you got other needs to do, and this is something I think a lot of teams right now are trying to get a lot of their players done because they want to know how much shopping are we going to have to do? How expensive is our free agency going to have to be? Because we either keep some players or we didn't keep some players.
And they all want the same thing, right? They want consistency. And I think this is a year where it seems to me teams in total, there's not as much movement with players.
You mean continuity, I think.
Yeah, continuity. Yeah. Sorry. I'll blame that on the cold. Everybody's trying to keep the guys they've got maybe more than most years. And I think that it's because of the parity in the CFL is like it's never been, which means you don't want to lose a step on your opponent. So you're doing a better job of trying to keep player.
Every team right now is trying to figure out how to gain that competitive advantage, right? So for the teams that have been doing so well, it's how do we keep the band together without having to change the formula? But you even heard Pinball say on the call today, once in a while your team needs a bit of a refresh.
Right.
Every team goes through some period of transition. And the Argos have been through that. Even when after they won their first Grey Cup, there was change, right? Now, sometimes the change is good, sometimes the change is okay. Like we kind of hope that we don't have as much right as we would want. Right? Teams like the continuity, players like the continuity, but players also like the opportunity. Right? And we're seeing. I think what we're seeing right now with like a lot of the moves that have been happening. For some players, it's all right. We're getting we're getting more opportunity, but we're also maybe having to go somewhere else to get that opportunity as well.
Well, look at the last trade they made. They did. There were so many. There have been so many trades this past couple of days after the meetings end. So the reporters can't ask because the trade's been made. Adetoboye gets sent to Ottawa
Mhm.
for was a sixth round pick or
Fifth round
fifth
pick and
round
a
pick,
player
and a
on the free
defensive lineman, the rights to a defensive lineman.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that trade tells it all. What the Argos are looking for are that they're going to need some help on their defensive line, and that trade is helping them do that. They feel they have some depth there. They have a big Canadian fullback there. I think that we'll see more time now, and he moves up the depth chart. Adetoboye, before he was injured last year, the year before the Grey Cup, the first you referred to it as the first Grey Cup. I'll do that as well. We'll call that the first Grey Cup of the pinball um, new era with the Argos.
Mhm.
And yeah, so he didn't have that good a year this past year, and I think he became expendable because of that. Now it could have been him still recovering. A lot of times, players like that have an injury and they don't recover completely, even emotionally, because of the injury. They need a little more time, and we'll see how he plays in Ottawa. I think he'll be a really good asset there. And the Argos are going to try and rebuild their defensive line, which they already rebuilt last year. It's not like when you refer to refresh, reset, it's it's more like duck and cover. you know, watch out because we're losing players. They're going they're going down south or they're going they're just going and not. It's a good move for them. It's something they have to do, and I really believe that's a signal to me that they're looking for money, and I know where they're going to put that money. And when Dinwiddie spoke to us today, signing McManus didn't sound like something that was iffy. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, and it'll probably happen in the next week, if not in the next couple of days.
I think of it too this way. They when last year they extended Adetoboye and in doing so gave him some more guaranteed money, gave him some it was a bit of a salary increase, but it was also to spread around his contract a bit. It was believed that man, okay, he's gonna get more opportunity. But the thing is at the running back position, you only have so much to spend, right? And at some point, you have to look at where you can make savings. And unfortunately, that's one of the skill positions where you think you can find production, uh, you know, in a less costly way. And look, Deontay McMahon, they extended him, and that to me
And
signals
Brown,
maybe
they brought Brown in as well.
yeah. So they're comfortable with that, and they brought in another running back from the states as well. I think he played for Ohio State, if not mistaken. But what I do think is with a lot of teams right now, some teams are flush with cash, others aren't. So you gotta take advantage where you potentially can. And we know Ottawa, they've been looking for a running back for a bit. And you got a running back who's Canadian. It's a bit of a ratio changer too. And look, I understand a lot of fans too are probably aren't happy because this is a player who's also a local, right? It's a Toronto native, so it hurts in those regards as well. But this is the cost of trying to maintain this championship window that they have right now.
Yeah, it it's all about. Unfortunately, it's all about money, and it's not all about money that you're willing to spend. How much you're willing to spend? It's how much you can spend.
Mm.
So now we look at the Canadian Football League, and you look around, and you're seeing also the other thing you're seeing is that the development of number one quarterbacks. I think we have probably the best um, group of 1-2 quarterbacks that I can remember in the Canadian Football League. If you go by their ability and their, what they've accomplished, you look at Saskatchewan, and they have a legitimate two number one quarterbacks. If the Argos come back with Arbuckle, they're going to have two legitimate number one quarterbacks. I mean, you've got the MOP from last year, the year before, I should say, and then you've got the guy that won the Grey Cup, at quarterback for the Argonauts. That's not your 1 and 1A. They're two ones. They're legit. And wherever you look, teams are trying to do that. Even when you look at Edmonton, uh, you know, I really think Trey Ford is the number one quarterback. But look who he's got. Another MOP, Grey Cup MOP. So there's a lot of really good quarterbacks in the Canadian Football League right now, and it's become something. I think we talked a few years ago, if you remember, David, we were talking about they needed to have a second quarterback, and I think that's something we saw, and I think that's what obviously, I mean, we were looking at the elephant in the room, and everybody else saw the elephant in the room, and the teams decided, they need to foster a better quarterback thing going on. And one of the questions, trying to remember which team, I asked, so are you interested then in having a quarterback that is short yardage quarterback? No, they said, we can work something out. They can use fullbacks. Now we're going to see more of that, like I was talking about early in the year, David, where we don't see 100% number two quarterbacks going in for that yard.
Well, yeah, I mean that's it, right? You hear every single GM or coach say we need two quarterbacks to compete in the CFL. Um, every single team, I believe, has. I would say every team almost has their quarterback room spoken for. I know Toronto said they're looking to bring Arbuckle back, and that's something that they're going to try to hammer
They're
around
close.
and get done.
Dinwiddie said he's close. They're close.
Right, and even Pinball said like they're working on it, right? So it that's when it comes to the quarterback position, it's almost like every team. We look at every team, it's like, yep, everyone's got a quarterback. Like that's the one thing in this league that I don't think you're looking at a team and saying, I don't know if this guy's a CFL quarterback. These are all CFL level quarterbacks. It's just now the real change is how you build around them, right? Which team has the best Canadian talent? That was the big one. Which teams have, the best defense? It's just like you're trying to find those competitive advantages. Quarterback is one where I feel like I wouldn't say level playing field, but it's almost like there isn't this huge gap as we used to see. And so, I mean, maybe with the second quarter, and look, now I think more teams are getting even more prepared with that second quarterback than we've seen in a long time. I think what happened to Winnipeg in the Grey Cup really changed. I mean, I'm sorry, Winnipeg and Toronto, because we had two ends of the spectrum there. One team that was prepared for the injury while the other team was not prepared for the injury. You saw the two spectrums there that really made teams realize, okay, we say we need two quarterbacks, but now we actually have to plan to have two quarterbacks in this league.
Now, in defense of Winnipeg, we don't want to make it sound like the management made a decision that it was a bad decision. The decision was made for them when Strebler went down.
Yes.
And the only thing you can say about management is that they didn't find somebody that they trusted. And this is the key here. This is the big key. This is what that game highlighted. And I tried to talk about that with Winnipeg's GM. And that is, in the Grey Cup game, once their number one quarterback went down, Winnipeg did not have an option. And they had to play their injured number one, because I don't think they had enough faith in their number three that was number two at that point. While the Argos were using their number three Because when the season started, you know, I don't think we have to remind everybody that Arbuckle was not the number two quarterback. He sat on the bench when the first 9 games when we had the issue with Kelly out for suspension. Arbuckle wasn't the quarterback, so um, you can't say a third quarterback isn't important now either. That's what the experience with the Argos said. Because if the Argos didn't have the third quarterback and their second quarterback was injured and their first quarterback was injured, they would have had no quarterback, but they had Arbuckle. Whereas the opposite is true with Winnipeg. Their first and second quarterbacks were hurt, and they didn't bring in the third guy. So it's gotten to that point. And I said earlier in the year, it looked like they were getting away. Some teams, at least, were looking like they were getting away. I think it was Ottawa that's getting away from having the quarterback to run the 3rd and 1. So, and I think that's all part, David, that if we look at the NFL and the Canadian Football League, there seems to be the cycle has seemed to come back for running backs being very important to a team. There was a time before recently when running backs didn't have, you could tell by the contracts they signed how unimportant they were. Well, it's coming back again, even in the NFL, as it is in the CFL.
Oh no, that's definitely true. And like we think about your backup quarterback, yeah, was generally that was just seen as the guy that come in and do the QB scramble. But now I know this guy better be ready to run the offense when the time comes, right? And so I do think that when you look at where this dynamic has changed, it's also how do we find quarterbacks,
Yeah.
right? A lot of these, yeah, you get moved around and moved around, but also trying to find quarterbacks elsewhere, right? I'm curious. I have obviously haven't really looked too much at the CFL draft and the draft boards. I don't. I know that obviously Curtis Rourke, Nathan's brother, is going to go for the NFL.
Yeah.
Like where,
Easy.
where do we stand on that? Right, like drafting quarterbacks or trying to find quarterbacks. Um, like I'm very curious to see how that all. It's still a little. I know a lot of people aren't talking about CFL draft right now, but like that goes into long term planning of how these teams prepare for it.
Well, David, if you're making the priority that the quarterback has to be the guy, the number two has to run the offense instead of saying, okay, he's the guy that does our 3-1, 3rd and 1. Sorry, you're gonna force yourself to pick somebody that's more suited for the role of being the quarterback, not the guy that gets your third down, right? The Strebler type of guy, we're going to see less of that, and we have seen less of that. We're seeing more and more that the CFLs realize that, and the teams almost as a rule have realized you got to have two really good quarterbacks if you want to have success in the Canadian Football League. And what happened last year in the Grey Cup? What happened the first year the Argos won the Grey Cup? I mean, they had a backup quarterback that came in and won the Grey Cup for them, that being Kelly. So the message has landed, and I'm wondering how important that two quarterback situation that the rules have allowed has made that also a subtle difference. Now nobody's using that yet. Nobody's put two quarterbacks out there at once, David, but they can. That's just the thing. So it's interesting. That part's interesting. As far as the rest of the teams are concerned, there's a lot of change going on in the Canadian Football League, a lot of management change. The one that impresses me the most is Mark Killam. He's a guy that now is the head coach in Edmonton. He's been ready. He's been ready to be a head coach. And then we have in BC Buck Pierce, who's been ready to be a head coach for a very long time. He gets his chance. The other thing I wanted to discuss with the GMs is this thing where they seem to be trusting first time coaches more right now than they have at any time that I can remember in the recent past.
What I think this speaks to is the recycled coaching carousel, or however you want to call it. In maybe a lot of ways, teams are like, okay, some of us have been down this road. we need to go down a different path. And it's just also the development of coaches nowadays, right? I think maybe in the past there could be some criticism on not really developing coaches or having coaches ready for to take that step. I don't think that's the case anymore. Really, we have seen a true rise in capable coaches, which speaks volumes to where the league is right now. I think in terms of how they've taken, I guess, how serious it is. They've taken the idea of developing coaches. Like, look at Mark Killam. You just brought him up. 20 years in Calgary. Like, he's not an old he's not old by any stretch. Okay, maybe a little less, about 20 years to say in Calgary. Like, he's not old by a sense. This is somebody that was groomed from, a young age to be a coach. And even Dave Dickinson said, like, he was surprised that it took them this long. And Killam's like, well, it was a little easier this time to take a job when you don't have a job.
Right.
I thought that to be a pretty humorous.
Yeah, well, that's
Um,
because of the question that I asked him, and
what made this one right? Well, needed a job. So I think, yeah, Buck Pierce, Corey Mace last year,
Ryan
um,
Dinwiddie,
Ryan Dinwiddie when he was brought
Jason
in.
Moss.
Moss is a little different because he was coaching for a bit. When he first got, maybe with the first time he got in with, I think it was Edmonton, right? Was his first head coaching gig.
Yeah.
But again, it's that development curve of you're seeing these players really take some of them are like, okay, well, I'm done playing. I'm gonna get right into coaching because I feel like I can develop myself into being that next guy. Again, credit to some of these coaches though that are giving those opportunities for these guys to take those steps too.
I have a theory about that too. I'm not saying it's the answer, but I think a contributing factor will be the management cap. How does that impact? Well, very simply, that if uh, a coach is a really good coach and the head coach knows it, they used to be able to throw a little more money at them so they'd stick around. Now, a head coach candidate is only going to get the decent money that he's looking for if he becomes a head coach,
Mhm.
because there isn't that much money now where you could have, like we're talking about, two quarterbacks, not a backup, but a two starting quarterbacks. The same is true now with coaches for a different reason. Once a guy develops a reputation that he's a really good coach and he's so good that he could be a head coach, but we have him here as an assistant. That's harder to do with the management cap in place, because you can't afford to pay two guys to be the head coach. One, because you don't want to lose him, and the other one because he's your head coach. That can't happen anymore. So now I think maybe that's part of the reason why you've got all these young guys that are becoming head coaches, because quite frankly they're springing free because teams can't afford to keep them on their payroll. And I look at Mace as one of those. I look at Mark as one of those that we just talked about. Even Dinwiddie could be one of those where, for them, teams won't stand in the way of them getting a higher position. But along with that higher position comes more money. So, it's the financial reward for taking a chance on a guy, is that he springs loose. He's a guy who could be a head coach. Now you pay him like a head coach, and then you see what kind of success you have. And there's been a lot of success with first time coaches recently.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, like Corey Mace had some great success first year in Saskatchewan, Dinwiddie in Toronto. It's not necessarily that they're first time coaches; it's where they've come from, the coaching tree. We talk a lot.
Sure.
You ask a lot of people in the NFL, right? You had the San Francisco coaching tree, all the guys who were under
You,
um,
you didn't hear what
Shanahan.
Dinwiddie said today on that.
I missed Dinwiddie
I
today. I was
know.
so
You know what
disappointed.
he said? He said, if you look at the NFL now with head coaches, they're all sons of former head coaches.
Well, not only that, it's you look at the where they've gone, right? Who are they assistants under? Like, there was a time where it was valuable to be an assistant under Coach Bill Belichick because everybody wanted to get somebody from his staff. Didn't necessarily work out once they went to another team, right? So I think it's where they come from too that really plays into it as well, right? You see with Saskatchewan, they went after Mace after Toronto wins a Grey Cup, and he also led them to this great regular season.
Oh yeah,
So Saskatchewan's like, we need to see what can he bring from there to help our team. And Edmonton, right? They're going after Calgary, a team that they've always maybe been a step behind, right? And how can we change the culture that we have in Edmonton? Let's bring somebody from Calgary who knows what it takes. And you heard Mark Killam talk.
and he's a local guy too.
He's a local guy, but he's also a guy that is very confident in what he can do as a coach because he said it. I wasn't just a coach that was in the back, right? Just kind of observing. I was in the front as a special teams guy, assistant coach,
Yeah,
talking to the players. So he's done a little bit of that. So you probably, if you're Edmonton, you feel confident in that because you've seen a guy like Killam um, do it there, right? You've coached the game, you've gone against it, and he's probably gotten a lot of nice reviews from anyone you talk about around league. And it's apparent when you talk to him. Like, this is the first time I've ever seen him talk in front of the media. So it's you can see why Edmonton went in that direction.
yeah. I got to know him a little bit. Previous Grey Cups, the ones where Calgary were involved in the Grey Cup against the Argos and some other ones that they played in, and I had a chance to talk to him. And I always thought of him as a bright mind when it comes to football. So I wasn't surprised that he was made, the assistant coach in Calgary, and I wasn't surprised that he has become a head coach. Buck Pierce is a guy that it didn't surprise me that he became a head coach. I really thought he would have done it a lot sooner. And he had, that there were some teams sniffing around Winnipeg asking for permission, right? That wanted him. For me, he could have been a head coach too a lot sooner. And now the opportunity has come in a place where he used to play. Um, you know, uh, and I think he'll be successful, and he's there for a specific reason. He's there to help their young quarterback, and he's confident he can work with them. And when I talk to him, there's no question that they know who their number one quarterback is.
Yeah, I mean, look, 10 years as a coordinator, right? He was, I believe, he was right out. It was right after his playing career too. Like
Right. La
he
Police was in the position for 1 year, and then La Police left to be a head coach in no, was it Ottawa?
yeah, it was
Yeah, I
Ottawa.
guess it was Ottawa, and then he took over as the offensive coordinator in Winnipeg.
He did take over when La Police left in 2020. He had about 5 years under his belt as like a positions coach before he became the offensive coordinator. But yeah, I mean, this is, I know that some people are wondering, oh, why go this route? There were quite a few people involved in that BC hiring process. Um, I do think that when you look at the decision to go with Buck Pierce, I think you're totally right. I think it has a lot to do with Nathan Rourke and trying to figure out that piece of the puzzle because ultimately you're trying to unlock that ability, right? And you also think about who was who the GM is too,
Yeah. I
right?
tried my theory on him, the one that I've said on here, that maybe what affected him being a young quarterback was the experience in the NFL, and the way the BC GM described it was simply he was brought into a place on a Tuesday, and then he was playing, and then he was starting as a quarterback on Saturday or Sunday. He didn't have a lot of time to prepare for games, and he was on a carousel of teams. So it might have played with his mind a little bit. So now I think this off season will be a good reset for him, and then he'll be able to be with a guy who understands what it's like to be a quarterback and has had some success. And I look forward to a good season from BC.
I mean, BC's got a lot invested, right? That's not a team. That's an owner that wants to see improvement. They don't want to be. They're not content with just making the playoffs, right?
Not just
Uh,
competing.
right. They don't want to just compete. They were very disappointed that they were not in the championship conversation last year.
Well, we witnessed the reason. We were in BC to watch the Grey Cup, so that was, there's a lot of motivation there for him to want to get his team in there. But it's going into Winnipeg. Irony of ironies. After 5 straight, you know, visits to the Grey Cup, five, right? 5 Grey Cup visits in a row. They're going to have to make it 6 because now it's in their barn.
Talk about making it easy on them, right? I I do think that if you're Winnipeg, you're seeing teams around that understand that they got to push, right? It's an unprecedented thing to see a team go to 5 straight Grey Cups. It's also very unprecedented to see a team lose it 3 times in a row. So if you're
Unless you're the
Winnipeg,
Bills.
there's a lot of pressure right now in Winnipeg. I think this year, I think out of all the teams in the league, no one has more pressure on them than Winnipeg and Hamilton.
Absolutely, and both for the same reason.
Yeah.
Having success getting to the Grey Cup and not succeeding. Having multiple disappointments in the Grey Cup. That's the kind of pressure that's unique, but it's not unique to those two teams. When you talk about Hamilton, this is a team that if they straighten out their defense, I know I keep saying it, but it's been inching along. The league is becoming more and more competitive. There are no longer just also-rans in the Eastern Division anymore. We're seeing, since Hamilton finished first and had all those great seasons, and they were head and shoulders above the other teams in the East. Once that ended, and once the Argos took over, it hasn't been because the Argos have been the only team playing well these last 3 years. They've had company, the kind of company the Eastern Division didn't provide before that, and that's great. But it also makes things very interesting, and I think it's a great time to be a CFL fan right now.
Oh, definitely. I think maybe if you're a West Division fan, you're obviously annoyed that it's always Winnipeg there. I get that, but I think it hasn't been easy for Winnipeg either, though.
No,
It's been a tough road for them to get to the Grey. The reason why they've struggled in the Grey Cup because getting to the Grey Cup has not been easy for them either. So
even though
I
they've only had to play one game to get there, even though
yeah, but this past year was the biggest struggle that they had because they went from being a team that did not come out of the gate hot. They were a team that some thought, even myself, I wondered if they were even going to make the playoffs.
yeah, that was no, you weren't alone. I was like, I don't know if this is real, but you remember who the running back wasn't, and we just found out how important the running back is to that team, and why he is an MOP and why he's paid so much. So that
Mhm.
can be said too. Um, so the winter meetings are over. The teams and the coaches and GMs have been spoken to. A lot of interesting news. If you're interested in listening to directly what they all said, I'll be posting that on my Facebook page, on my YouTube channel, so you'll be able to watch for yourself. You won't have to listen to my interpretation of what they said. You can hear directly what they said and what the reporters, other than TSN, had to ask around the Canadian Football League. So I invite you to check those out when I get them up. I've got the coaches ones up already. I hope to have the ones for the GMs. I'm waiting for the CFL to send them to me. And it's fun listening to stuff, and I really want to go back to the one with Ryan Dinwiddie where he talked about being a coach in the NFL. He made it very clear he loved to coach in the NFL.
Oh, of course. I mean, the NFL, even coordinators, sometimes some coordinators make more than what a CFL coach makes, right?
They make millions. He said, you make 5 million as a coach. He dropped that number, and
And it's a challenge. There's more there. I mean, there's a challenge in coaching the CFL. I'm not saying there isn't, but there's a heightened challenge and expectation coaching at the NFL. It's the highest level of football,
yeah,
and I understand CFL fans may scoff at that, but that's the true nature of it, right? Even NCAA to some degree, there's something about coaching at that level too. Again, there's financial reasons.
that's something Dinwiddie doesn't want to do. He doesn't like the
I
way
think he,
college
I think he
football works.
prefers the professional aspect, coaching pros versus coaching
Yeah. Well, he said
college kids.
he basically said he only wants to be an NFL coach. He doesn't want to be a college coach.
Yeah, but in a lot of ways, it's him shooting for that. You know that's the level, right? That's kind of where you want to. It's a good ambition to have. It's just he even said it today. Like it's making NFL teams realize there's value in bringing in a CFL coach as
Yeah,
well.
and well, I reminded him, and he was very well aware of the history. There was a time when CFL quarterbacks were CFL quarterbacks. They weren't going to be NFL quarterbacks. Warren Moon changed all that. And he also addressed the fact that there had been CFL coaches historically that have gone to the NFL, but that's back in the 70s, a long time ago. It hasn't been true recently. I guess, I guess that's a good segue to go to the NFL, and Super Bowl licks is up for grabs. Is that what it is? Super Bowl licks, LAX. Super Bowl licks. Yeah. Doesn't suck, it licks. Um, I watched a few of the games, and I also kept an interest in all. I kept an interest in all of the games. I watched some of the games, and I think what you can say about the NFL and the hierarchy, even though the two best teams weren't involved in this round of playoffs, there still was pretty much the teams that are supposed to win did win. The difference between them and their opposition, there's a big gap between the top 5 or 6 and the rest of the league.
Well, that's what you get when you have the expanded playoffs, right? You when they did that, obviously it was to get another weekend of playoff games, having more teams involved in the race. But what you saw this weekend in a lot of ways, I mean, yeah, in some ways there was some surprise, a couple of surprises, but not too many surprises, unless you're me and just a one. Can I just say to
That you're a Dallas
anybody?
Cowboys fan? Yes, you can say
No,
that.
no, I'm not even bringing the Cowboys into this. I'm one of the few people that don't want the Cowboys to have a platform right now.
Oh, okay, sorry.
The Los Angeles, I was about to call them the San Diego Chargers, but the Los Angeles Chargers, the LA Chargers, no matter who they have as the coach, no matter who they have as the quarterback, that team remains cursed in the
An
playoffs.
enigma.
And stupid me thought, yeah, let me bet on them.
Oh, no,
Let
you
me
didn't,
let
did you?
I bet on them to cover, and if they had covered, I would have won my parlay.
There you go.
They were a minus. They were a -3. They were a -3 underdog. It was supposed to be a close game. Then Justin Herbert decided to stop playing quarterback.
And
Um,
hang on to the football.
yeah. Shout out to Houston's defense for bailing out their offense. Which, my
Oh,
God,
no kidding.
that game was so tough to watch at the beginning, and then mistakes out of mistakes out of mistakes.
Ugh.
So good luck doing that against Kansas City. By the way,
Uh,
that's your reward for that game. The other ones, maybe Washington was a little surprising, just because.
Well,
Inexperience.
they beat the odds, right?
They did, but they beat a team that I thought had a better chance because to me, they were better set up, in my opinion, with the experience that they had.
They were number
But
3 seed.
yeah, yeah, but I mean, Well, I also saw a lot to do with the divisions and things like that. Um, I do like. I was a big fan of um how Washington has done things this year in terms of they went through those ups and downs and found ways around it. Tampa, to me, were one of those teams where I thought they had a high ceiling, but the floor could be so bad for them if they don't.
And it was. And Washington's just like the San Diego Chargers. I mean, the LA Chargers. They've been a mistake. They've been a tire fire.
And they
And
almost didn't pull that off too.
yes,
Like that kicker has like
going
you see he has a bit of OCD because you saw him
uh,
constantly
uh,
flipping the hair. So before you put the helmet on, there's a little bit of stuff there where it's been noted.
pressure.
And then you got the Rams taking on the Vikings. The
That was
Vikings, that was disappointing. I thought that was
that
a
was
team.
supposed to be the best game of the weekend.
That was a quarterback who I think we remember now why he wasn't a
Oh, come
quarterback.
on. You're gonna kick dirt on the grave, are you?
I mean, look, Sam Darnold. There was a saying with him when he played the Patriots where he was seeing ghosts. I don't think he had confidence in that offensive line. I think that impacted his mentality. But I will say this: please, LA, give the Eagles more of a fight than the Packers did. I mean, the Packers, everybody got injured, but that to me was the most uncompetitive game in my opinion. Between the Steelers were they were the most uncompetitive team in terms of all the ones that played,
Yes.
but the Packers were the bigger disappointment for me because I thought that we're going to give the Eagles a bigger fight. And look, I think maybe LA will give the Eagles a bit more run for their money, especially because they got a very. You can't count out Matthew Stafford, and you know for a fact the NFL will love Stafford versus the Lions for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. They would eat that up. I mean, the Eagles too. They would eat having the top two teams in the NFC go up against each other. But these are some juicy matchups this weekend.
Very. And I guess uh, the game that this weekend should be the big one are two of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL right now, Buffalo um, and Baltimore. Jackson has not been very successful in the playoffs, but he seems to be finding his way. And then in Buffalo, you've got a quarterback that has learned um, not only to abide by checkdowns and make sure he checks his checkdowns, that he doesn't take chances. He's become a little more conservative, which has stood him well in the season. And he's going to need to be like that against Jackson because if Buffalo makes too many mistakes against Baltimore, they could be in trouble. But I really like Buffalo's chances.
Buffalo's chances are twofold for me. He took chances, Josh, on that 4th and 1, and he threw it to the end zone. I'm like, oh boy, that was a gutsy. But they were already in a good, comfortable position. Two things are going to have to happen for Buffalo to win this game. Derrick Henry, they're going to have to find a way to keep him in check
Yep.
because the Steelers couldn't, and the Steelers are a really good defense, and the Bills haven't been always good against the run. And Lamar Jackson, you can't let him be comfortable because he will try to escape the pocket. Your linebackers and defensive, you're going to have to be so. What's the word I'm looking for here? Disciplined in how you play that running back quarterback combo, the best in the league between Jackson and Derrick Henry. That is going to be a very tough matchup. Buffalo, I mean, your reward for how the season has gone is, yeah, we get home field advantage at least until the AFC Championship game, but we have to play the Ravens,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, so I mean, they already knew that this was going to be a tough road for them. As soon as Kansas City won this is why winning the first seed in the AFC means so much more because you potentially avoid that matchup. And if you're Buffalo, this is kind of you reap a little bit of what you sow. They they're gonna have to hope that this isn't an offensive shootout, in my opinion. I don't know if Buffalo offensively can go toe to toe with Baltimore.
Uh, has Jackson, the question really is, has Jackson figured out how to play in the playoffs? Has the team that he plays for figured out how to play in the playoffs? They won this past game. Historically, they haven't been very good. He hasn't been very good in the playoffs. If he's figured it out, when we talked about the Canadian football and we talked about the quarterbacking, how it's improved in the Canadian Football League, the NFL, yeah, it's been improving and it improved the last couple of years. And Jackson's the kind of guy that if he plays the way he's capable, he can win with on his feet and his arm. So he can kill you two ways. And the Bills have the same kind of advantage, but I agree with you that Buffalo's going to have to come up with a better defense just so their offense can spring free. If they can create a situation where they get good field advantage because of their defense, that offense will work well. I don't think the offense will work that well. Well, they've done it a few times this year, watching them, but in the shadow of the goalposts, they're going to need a lot of points to win. I think this is going to be a shootout. I really do.
This is, I think, I'm wondering if this is the first time. Well, it's probably not the first time, but every single team in this Final Four, all the quarterbacks minus LA
Hmm.
were drafted in the first round.
Wow.
Well, actually, because LA didn't draft their quarterback, and neither did Detroit. But all these quarterbacks were
Yeah, but
taken.
Detroit was a first round
I
guy.
think Hurts maybe wasn't though. Actually, now I think about it, he might have been second round. But these were high pick quarterbacks, or these were quarterbacks taken higher. So I'm very curious to see how, like, this should be probably the best. Like, everyone talks about the wild card being the best weekend. In my opinion, I think this weekend is going to be the best weekend of the playoffs
I don't know.
because all the matchups you can see. I mean, maybe Kansas City just because of how they've been and how Houston's been up and down. But I can see a reason for each team winning their matchups. I really can, but there are clear favorites, right? Detroit, Philly, Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore. That to me is the biggest toss up. I think it's if it gets into high shooting, oh man, Buffalo better be ready to for that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to be interesting. I, I, I still think Buffalo will end up meeting Kansas City again. And I'd be very interested, will Philly be there again? I agree with you. I agree with you. LA Detroit is the match that television wants. But if you wanted to see something like that would really blow people's minds, that would be Philly and Washington. But I think it will be LA and Detroit. I think they're that good. So that'll be the setup for the Super Bowl, and we can talk about that next week. Um, I guess. Who do you think are going to be in
My
the
early
final
pick for
NFC final and AFC final?
I think it's gonna be I if the Lions can do what the Lions have done throughout the year. I still like the Lions. Give me Baltimore. I think Baltimore's got the right ingredients. I think the winner of that Baltimore Bills game is going to go to the Super Bowl.
You think they're going to roll past Kansas City if they get
Yeah,
past Texas?
I don't know if think Kansas City's got it this year. I've been proved wrong a few times before with Kansas City. I don't think this is the year for them though.
And that would be because their offense isn't as
I just think
impactful.
that I just think this is They need more than just Patrick Mahomes to win this. Their defense still remains one of the tops to beat, but I think it's beatable. They don't have the star talent that they used to. They really don't.
Um, and we're getting to the point where the history that they've had, where they've been on the verge of losing a game, um, that could run out on them. And I'm a KC fan. They've won a lot of games. I'm not going to say they shouldn't have won, but they've won every game that there was uh, a possibility that they lose. They've won games. They've really they've stayed one step ahead of the Grim Reaper all year. The question is, will they be able to do it a couple more times? And to your point, David, if they can, then they will win. If they can't, they're going to be up against. I wouldn't even suggest, and even as a KC fan, I don't think the Texans are going to be that easy to beat for KC.
No.
To be honest with you, so they're still running just ahead of the Reaper. So, yep. For me though, I guess because I'm a KC fan, I'm saying KC, and I think a great a great game would be KC against Detroit, and that would be a Grey Cup. Sorry, Grey Cup. I just got CFL in my mind still. A Super Bowl that would be interesting that didn't involve the left or the right coast,
Interesting.
because that's the media. The media loves the East and the West Coast, right? L.A., New York. Give us that. That's what we want. That's where we make all our big money. And these would be, if you know what I mean, this would be the blue states Super
Yeah.
Bowl. So it is, the flyover states getting their glory. Final word to you, my friend.
It'll be a fun weekend of football. I'm glad. These are the times where you crave football, and they're bringing it every. This weekend will be big.
Yeah, the Grey Cup sets up some really good football. It was a great game, and the games following it in the NFL are great games as well. So enjoy the football this weekend, folks. However it comes, enjoy it. David, thanks for doing this.
Thank you,
And
Frank.
what am I doing here? Oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to say goodbye. So for David, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 4 p.m. We took it a day later. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and watch it. I'm Candid Frank. Enjoy the football this weekend. I'm going to work on this cold. I don't know what you're going to do. I'm going to work on the cold and watch football. Till next time.